Breathe. Peace. Infinite War Junction is here. December 21st, 2020. You see, I told you. 2020 is about the 2020 vision. This is the time we are all supposed to be getting our vision back. And the Great Conjunction is in alignment with that. It's helping people wake up from the matrix, from the deep sleep. And this is why they are keeping your ass in lockdown. This is why Britain became the first country to approve the Pfizer vaccine. They said, hey, guess what? Merry Christmas. Next week, they want to have 40 million doses of that vaccine. And other countries are going to follow suit. Yeah, they want you vaccinated, microchipped, on a low frequency. They want you stuck on fear. Why? Because the whole world is waking up. It's a planetary alignment happening, deep divers.
All right, what's going on, everybody? So, I'm a little bit behind on my Ralph Smart videos. And it's not that I stopped watching them for any particular reason. I just haven't been watching them. Anyways, I put on one that might be 2 or 3 days old. It's the one about the Great Conjunction. Saturn and Jupiter being very close, like a fucking, I don't know if it's a degree or a few degrees away. He says it in that video. And I think he got a lot of things right in that video. I think he said a lot of great things. And I don't like going against Ralph because he was very, Ralph is out there for, I think Ralph is a great person that people can watch and get hope and learn a base knowledge. And from his videos, if you take his videos in and all the things he talks about and goes through, you can take each section and every piece of different information he talks about, and then you can go and explore those more, and then go down these not necessarily rabbit holes, but go down these different areas, and from there you're going to learn a lot. Okay, and he's got a lot of older videos that are very, very, very well and informative. Now, I wouldn't be doing my not job, but I can't necessarily agree with his video completely, because it talks about Jupiter being the god of expansion and, you know, the god of gods and all that, which is true, and especially at one point, depending on where you look, Jupiter, fucking Thor, Zeus, not Apollo, all the different versions right up until Jesus, but of archetypes that Jupiter represents, was very much the one people like looking at, because, you know, he's a benevolent king. But when Ralph gets into Saturn, talking about Chronos, talking about restriction, talking about there's a cult, the Saturn cult, and talks about Saturnalia in older times and all that, talking about how Jupiter is trying to show us that we have to be in love and not fear and all this, and, you know, Saturn is the fifth dimension, which, you know, it's more like 4 would be his number, and, you know, but and then Saturn being the 3rd dimension and whatever the case is, and I mean, that's not necessarily wrong, because if people are using Saturn energy, Satan, you know, Chronos, not Hades, that wouldn't be Hades, that'd be more like Mars, I guess, but they're using the Saturn energy, okay, satanic energy, whatever, because everybody has these energies within them. So if you start hating on Saturn, thinking, you know, because Saturn is a more maleficent planet, which it is, and Jupiter is more of a benevolent planet. But you learn more from the dark than you do from the light, by the way. You learn more from mistakes than you do from, you know, getting everything you want. Because if you got everything you wanted, then you realize you're not happy. So then Jupiter's like, well, all I can do is expand the things that you want and give you the things you want. But you can't find out what you want unless you go through Saturn first. Saturn is your root chakra. So anyway, so, you know, I don't like saying things like this, like dark magicians or, you know, left-hand path, whatever people, because the left-hand path doesn't mean you're a dark magician. But I think there is something to only being in your first 3 chakras, you know, being all Saturn, Sun, and Mars, if you want to go that way, or a primal, your more primal lower chakras and all that. And there's something to be said about that, and I think there's some truth to that to a certain degree. But everybody has a Saturn energy within them, and the difference between someone who is doing well and using, and maybe they're using Jupiter to expand all the things they want in life, and they're expanding their money so that they can help the other people out and create programs. Because you can give a poor person a bunch of money, and depending on why they're poor, it could be because they have a drug habit, it could be because whatever the reason, they just are impulsive. So giving them a bunch of money, getting Jupiter to expand your money and giving them money is not going to do a damn thing, but getting Jupiter to expand your money and getting a program and getting these people into these programs so that they're not just bored and don't know what to do with their life and can't get a chance, because anytime they get money, instead of trying to figure it out and do something productive with that money, they just blow it, do drugs, whatever, drink, gamble, whatever the case may be, right? So, but getting them into a program to separate them from their problems and give them a new start, and then, and allow them to go through their Saturn chakra opening, fear base, get rid of their bad programming and create new programming, and all that is more beneficial. And you can't get to that point where you can use Jupiter probably even before you fucking open your Saturn chakra, depending on, a whole bunch of things. But to be a well-balanced person, if you are the type of person that believes in the chakra system, well, the first one is fucking Saturn. Saturn is the ruler of this realm, and that's not because the people on this, maybe it's because the people in this realm decided to pick Saturn to be the ruler of the realm. Astrologically, I don't think just because the stars are lined up a certain way, it's just the way, and because the sun is not the closest one to us, but it's like the first one, right? And we're in the middle. But within your body, it's like, it's Saturn, and then it's Mars, and then it's the sun. You know what I mean? So, but Saturn's all the way at the end watching the rest of them. You know what I mean? And Saturn is tasked with the job to be, because Jupiter has correspondences to the judge and all that, but Saturn is the disciplinarian to a certain extent, is the one who makes you, know your limitation. And if you decide to fight Saturn and say, no, I don't want to be limited there, and go against it, then yeah, Saturn is going to kick your ass until you figure out how to work within your limitation. Once you realize what your limitation is through Saturn and everything else, and you work with Saturn, then Saturn's going to hook you up. It's going to help you out. So I don't like when anybody paints the picture that Saturn is the problem or anything to that effect. What? Okay, I'm coming in.
Why everything that's happening on the planet, the cabal, the inorganic ones, want to keep you trapped in the old world. You have to ascend. I'm ascending with a cat down the road, deep divers, and it feels marvelous. Deep divers, it's about to get intense. You see, a lot is happening all at once. People are saying, Ralph, they're introducing testing in my job. They say, if I don't get tested, I'm not going to have my job anymore. If I don't get vaccinated, I'm not going to have my job anymore. Chill. That's why you got to do for self. You got to come into nature. You got to get right with the elements. Let me tell you this, deep divers. Every single day, realize you are protected. The Great Conjunction shows us all that human beings are like tiny grains of sand in this giant universe. You see, in the ancient world, they respected their masters, which were the stars, the gods, the heavens, because they realized that there's levels to this shit. And what's happening on the planet is a planetary alignment, December 21st, 2020, the Great Conjunction, where humanity is being encouraged by the meeting of Saturn and Jupiter to move to the new world of freedom, love, positivity, where we connect to each other. Hey, that's why they introduced social distancing, to keep you away from each other in this time of the Great Conjunction, because they don't want human beings talking to each other. They don't want you meeting up with each other, just like there's a great meeting in the universe. So they say, hey, stay away from each other. It's all staged, it's all scripted. In fact, someone think in existence. Now, millionaires don't study astrology. billionaires do. What? Slow motion this side. Because they're smart enough to realize what is happening in the stars will affect what's happening on Earth. As above, so below, one of the 7 Hermetic principles. And go and check out the video, How to Manifest What You Really Want. We talk about the 7 Hermetic principles in that. So, Saturn and Jupiter are meeting. They're coming so close, 0.1 degrees apart from each other. And you are going to be able to see this event, this epic event, December 21st, 2020. All you have to do is go outside and look southwest. You're going to see these 2 beautiful planets in the sky, shining so bright. Now, Jupiter in Roman mythology is the god of gods. It's the largest planet, okay? Now, Jupiter's influence on you, on humanity, is that Jupiter represents growth, expansion, elevation, moving to the new paradigm, letting go of the old. Now, Saturn is the god of agriculture, the god of time. The Greek god, Kronos, is Saturn, the god of time, the god of illusion. In other words, the god of the matrix. What? Slow motion this side. And that's why they have the Saturn cult. Listen very closely. Saturnalia. In ancient Rome, you had a pagan, you were a weak against control. Saturn represents being stuck in the old. So, as above, so below. What's happening with the Great Conjunction is that a lot of people are having to make a choice right now to move out of the old paradigm and move into the new paradigm, because Jupiter is telling you it's time to let this matrix go. It's time to detach from the matrix. Oh, the inorganic ones know what time it is. They know that what's happening on the planet right now, something big is happening. They know that coronus derives from the Latin corona, which means crown. It means crown. This is the time on the planet where humanity is supposed to get their crown back. People, millions of people are waking up. So because millions of people are getting their vision back, 2020, they have to lower the frequency. They have to lower the vibration because they don't.
All right, so I'm back at it now. All right, sorry about that. I had to go deal with my daughter there. Yeah, so once again, this is not, I'm not dissing Ralph or saying he's wrong. Once again, I think he's got, there's a reason he does his videos, and I think they serve a purpose and all that. But, and this is my perspective of it. So his perspective is of what he said. Now, like, I was kind of waiting around to see if he was going to say something. This guy looks cool behind me with my tree, eh? I'm in my yard right now. There's my house. Anyways, I'm waiting for him to say, you know, something to the effect of, like what I was saying, like people can use Saturn in a bad way, or you could figure out how to balance your Saturn chakra. Saturn is a very important planet. He's the top of the Kabbalistic tree of life for a reason. Like in a battery, in any circuit, you need a positive and negative. Well, he's definitely the negative flow. But as we know, if you're banishing your poverty, well, that's using a Saturn energy. And, you know, you kind of need to banish poverty and then invoke prosperity, you know, financial wealth and abundance. But if you only invoke financial wealth and abundance and get Jupiter to expand your finances so you have more money, well, then you might end up just getting more debt too. You know what I mean? And having to spend your all your new money and wealth on all the debt because you didn't banish that. So you can use both of them, and then being that close together. I mean, in this, I'm going to play something for you, and it's from my book, Kabbalah and the Great Work of Self-Transformation. And it's when you start the grade of Zelter, which is the first elemental grade, the earth grade, because your neophyte's your first one, and that's your initiation stage. And the reason I'm playing this, and I've played it before, but it's because of the simple fact that the greater ritual of the hexagram is a ritual that is designed to reduce Saturn's effect on you. And as a result of that, you don't age as fast, you reduce all the planet's effects on you. So in this video, Ralph is saying that, you know, you have to make a choice. You either got to pick Saturn, let Saturn keep ruling you, or you have to pick Jupiter. And I'm telling you, those energies are both inside of you, and you don't pick, you have to work through them. What, baby? What? In your room, Savannah? Sorry about that, my daughter. Anyways, so to just pick either Saturn or just pick Jupiter is unbalanced. And I don't like saying that about Ralph. Like I said, he's making this video for a reason. And do I know his reasons? No. But for me, and it's not that I'm correcting him, so he made that video for a reason. He put it out there, and it's going to be useful to some people. He even says that there's going to be 3 days of darkness, a prediction. He says you heard it here first. Now, if you go on YouTube, there's no shortage of videos and predictions every year about this 3 days of darkness happening. If you go some places up north, like in the Yukon, potentially Alaska, this kind of thing happens. There's no sunlight. Now, I don't necessarily know if there's no electricity, but I know there's no sunlight for a few days. And you also have the opposite maybe it's dark for a while, and you have all sun just for like a day and a half or 2 days. Buddy I went to college with was living in the Yukon. But, and there's people on record on YouTube saying, I think it was Detroit a few years ago, where they actually had something like that happen. I wasn't there, so I don't know. You know, anybody can go to camera and say anything. I'm not saying they're lying. I mean, it could be true. But when I first got into this stuff, almost 5 years ago now, I was preparing for that, and I've been telling them that's the reason I bought a generator and a whole bunch of other things, and it still hasn't happened yet. Now, Ralph Smart's got quite a bit of followers, and if, let's say, the majority of his followers decide to believe that, and, you know, hopefully those believers, those people watching them, hopefully they don't have control of their mind completely, because, yeah, if they think it's going to happen and they believe him, well, then it's infallibly going to fucking happen. So that's not necessarily a good thing, but I don't think that's the reason he's doing it. I could be completely wrong. I could be completely wrong, and he could be doing it for a reason. He could be doing it as a test, or to see if he can do stuff like that. He's going to try it with 3 days of darkness first, which, you know, isn't a bad thing. Go without computers and electricity for 3 days. It's a good test to see if we could handle it, right? But at the same time, it's going to provoke a lot of bad things, you know, because we've had, I say we, I'm in Canada, but there's been a lot of rioting and different protests that went ugly this year. So you add that to 3 days of no electricity, and, you know, maybe alarm systems aren't on backup generators or batteries, and, you know, there could be a lot of harm that happens as a result of that. And that's not something I want to see, but I don't think that's going to happen. Now, there's something else to realize, is 3 days of darkness is a symbolic thing that the sun does, okay? So, you know, Zeitgeist is a good place to watch to find out about this, but if you look at the Mr. Astrotheology, I can't say that, but it's Santos Bonacci, he talks about the ecliptic, the way the sun travels, okay? And one of the things people often say about Christianity is that the Bible and those stories are astrological, which makes it almost an archetype. So this astrological shit, these stories, these planets that have archetypes or have personifications, well, these are things that are innate within us, and the sun is that. So the Son of God, Jesus, if you will. But there's been a lot of Messiah figures, if you believe and see what the Zeitgeist says, and that's kind of the point of archetypes. We have the proof that all these different tribes all around the world, from the Germanic Norse traditions to the Egyptians to the Mesopotamians to fucking everyone, even the Christianity has within it archetypes. They tend to focus on, you know, Jesus, if you're like a Roman Catholic, or, you know, anyways, doesn't matter. But point is, it's astrological. They like to say that. I don't know if it's completely astrological, but I do know before Jesus was born. And in the Egyptian myth, it said that Set, the precursor for Satan, Saturn, the evil, the dark brother, kills, I think it's Osiris, but Ra was also the sun god, but maybe this might have been prior to that. And then, it comes back with, but anyways, or Horus. I'm getting all my mythologies fucked up. But anyways, so for 3 days, the sun stays right, because like all year long, the sun's going through all these months, right? The 12 disciples are following God around, or the days of the week, the 7 days of the week, right? Jesus and his 12 apostles and 6 disciples, whatever that turns out to be, okay? He's going through the months every day, and then it's at Christmas time, or right before Christmas, around the winter equinox, where it's equal night. The sun doesn't move for 3 days, and that's where it comes from. And it's on a cross, basically. And like I said, Zeitgeist and other people can explain this a lot better for you, but it's right on specific axis. It's equal night, equal day, and that's why it doesn't move for 3 days. So this is a symbolic representation. If they do 3 days of darkness, it's like the dark sun. So I can see where people derive that people are trying to bring in Saturn and this evil energy and all that. But once again, Saturn isn't an evil energy. That is in the eye of the beholder. Can you use Saturn's negative polarity and, can you use that baneful energy to bad ends? Absolutely. But when you do that, you're creating a circuit. You're putting out energy that's going to return to you. Yeah, it has to affect a bunch of people and then come back to you. But once that's what happens. So, and that's part of Saturn. It's like, okay, if you can dish it out, you can use me to help you dish it out, but you're going to get it right back in your face. And that's the way all the planets work. That's why Jupiter is so loved, because if you put out good with Jupiter and you expand good things for people with Jupiter, well, you also get that to come back to you. It's a double-edged sword. It can work in your favor or against you. So to say that, things like, 9/11 or things like 3 days of darkness are symbolic things to Saturn, to do these evil things, to show whatever. I mean, there is something to be said about older cultures that used to make temples for their quote unquote negative evil deities. Like Set had a fucking temple. I forget all the gods' names, but all the bad gods that were blamed for when bad things happened, the negative ones on the negative polarity side there, that most people are more bad than good, they were worshipped. And if you didn't want certain bad things to happen to you, you would do an offering, sacrifice, whatever to that. I'm not saying you go kill your kid to fucking Saturn or something like that, but you make a candle to Saturn saying, I'm so grateful you banished my debt. So Saturn doesn't come around and make you get more debt. And you can say, well, why would Saturn give you more debt? It's like, no, you're the impulsive fuck that doesn't know how to fucking control itself. And then you're going to turn around and be like, oh, it's the evil world. It's the satanic Saturnalian people. It's like, no, it's us. These energies are within us. And if you don't understand them, well, whose fucking fault is that? So I have a big problem when I see anybody going out here and saying stuff like that. Now, once again, he might have meant to come around to say that, Saturn's a negative planet, but Saturn can give you lots of benefits once you use Saturn correctly, but that didn't end up happening in that video, so I was a little upset about that. But there was a lot of his information was accurate about certain things, especially about, Christmas time and all that shit. But I don't like when someone takes a planet and the granddaddy of them all and then shits on it and then uses it for and once again, I'm not saying he's wrong. I have no way to know if there is an evil cabal out there, which is kind of like the word Kabbalah, so I guess I'm one of these evil fucking people. But is it evil to understand the negative side of a mostly negative planet and figure out how to use that to your benefit to get yourself out of poverty? Or is it evil to pass judgment on a planet and blame that planet when that necessarily isn't accurate, and then you're getting more people's minds to think that same way, and thus they are taking an energy that's within their own body and saying they don't want to associate with it, it's evil, yet it's the beginning point of them. I think that's more of the evil. I'm not saying Ralph's doing it on purpose. He made some pretty good correlations there. couple things I didn't know about, but you know, like Chronos and the word crown and the word coronavirus are very similar. And I was like, when he said that, I was like, wow, you know. And Ralph's always been really good at putting little things like that together, right? And making little acronyms and breaking down words and stuff like that. And, you know, like I learned a lot from doing things like that. And once you do something like that, like if you take something and you find out what the real meaning to the root word is and all that shit, well, then you're kind of not necessarily inoculated from it. But if you're watching TV and there is something to, let's say, subliminal messaging and stuff like that, and there's other meanings to things, well, once you do that process with specific words that might have double meanings you don't know about, well then, yeah, they can't really affect you anymore. So that's something very important that, you know, one of the things I learned from Ralph. But Saturn isn't the problem, okay? So Saturn and Jupiter, let's say, well, I already gave the example, like you can get Jupiter to expand all the shit all you want, but if you don't have Saturn on your side as well, because you need both. You need to use both sides evenly. And like I said before, even doesn't have to be 50-50. I'm not telling you you have to be 50% of the time evil, 50% of the time good. I'm telling you, find out what your balance is. There might be 10% of your life where you have to be, you know, stern, strict, and dish out restriction and limitation and be the disciplinarian. If you have children, well, as your children get to the age of 18 before they go on their own, you're going to have to be that parent, because if you just give, well, they're just going to keep taking. And then once you can't give anymore, or let's say you can give it to them the whole life, and then you send them out on their own, and then they go to school, and then they're crushed by the fact that no one wants to just keep giving them stuff, because all they realize is all their life, all they got was give, and they never had to work for anything. Well, you're setting them up to fucking fail. So that's kind of my point. There are certain times where you have to be both. Both these energies are very important. Now, when it comes to what that happens in the sky, what effect that's going to have down here, I have no idea. That is way above my fucking pay grade. But what I do know is I'm not worried about it. And when I play you, I'm going to play the whole greater ritual of the hexagram. I'll play a little part first that just explains a little bit of something, and then I'll play the beginning of the chapter right through to the whole fucking ritual. And I don't know, maybe like 2 YouTube videos ago, I put Cabal and the Great Work of Self-Transformation PDF on that video, on a video. So it's in my last 3 videos, I'd say top 5 at the very most. But it's in there if you want. Then it's from this book. And if I think of it, I'll put the PDF on this video as well, again today. But the point is, the greater ritual of the hexagram after your neophyte stage is designed to reduce Saturn's effect on you. You know, lesser banishing. Anyways, I'll let that shit tell you exactly what's what, and then I'll come back on and then explain further. I think it's only about 5 minutes, and you know, it might be a little annoying, but because it's like Siri voice, right? And she doesn't pronounce things correctly. But I'm telling you, if you listen to this and you hear what it says, it's hard to argue with.
Hydrogen and helium that fuel it, like the box of chemicals in the example above. Our sun will eventually cool, settle down, and collapse, and the orderly paradise that is Earth will vanish within hours. The chemistry of life is the best example we have of resistance to entropy, even though nothing within the material world can triumph over decay and death. Life provides a temporary oasis of relief in a desert of disintegration. And as we humans are the witnesses, a remarkable spectacle is possible within that temporary refuge. The Grade of Zelator, this somewhat bleak picture of the material world, is the territory that the student traverses in the Zelator grade. The word Zelator, pronounced Zelator, is a corruption of the Latin word zelotes, meaning zealous person or zealot. The realm of material life is the official laboratory of this grade, and the student is expected to work up enough zeal to live effectively within it as the grades pass by. Material existence is entirely bounded and ruled by the planet Saturn. As you may have guessed from the assigned reading so far, when I refer to Saturn, I don't necessarily mean the planet in an astronomical sense, but rather the planet in the astrological sense. This means I'm talking about a particular kind of energy that happens to correspond to the movements of the physical planet Saturn. I am not saying that the physical planet in the sky is the source of that energy. Whether or not Saturnian emanations come from the physical planet is a matter of debate among astrologers. In any event, the forces to which Saturn corresponds are much larger. That darkly splendid world 94 Chapter 5, than our little solar system. Astrologically, Saturn represents the web of time and space that has ensnared our divine natures in the darkness of the universe. Its energy is entropy, decay, disintegration, death, and all of the limiting physical laws. As the second law of thermodynamics demonstrates, the realities of physical existence can be somewhat depressing. It is best that the new Zelator go forth into his work prepared with a ritual that keeps the forces of Saturn at bay at least. enough to retard their effects on his consciousness as he reaches deep down into himself, to draw upon inspiration from realms beyond time and death before starting the Zelator curriculum proper. Learn this new ritual by incorporating it into your already existing daily routine. Do it right after the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, and before the middle pillar exercise. Do not proceed onward into the other ritual work of Zelator until you know it by heart. The banishing ritual of the hexagram is a more refined kind of banishing ritual than the one you learned previously. Rather than removing you from the influence of matter, as the pentagram ritual does, it removes you from the influence of the planets. The densest and grossest of the planet Saturn lessens its influence over you when you perform this ritual. Banishing Saturn banishes, to some extent, all of the planets. Saturn is a force represented very high up on the tree of life, indicating that it contains the potential of all the other planets within it. As a result of the daily banishment of Saturn, you may begin to gain perspective not only over your physical environment, but also over higher-order functions, such as social relationships. The ties that bind will begin to lose their power over you. Emotions like guilt, envy, and insecurity will start to wane. This may be liberating for you. The resulting freedom may also be frightening. Before practicing the banishing ritual of the hexagram, brush up on your Egyptian mythology, particularly concerning the story of the death and resurrection of Osiris Kasar. The symbolism of the ritual's analysis of the key word taps into that myth. Symbolism of the banishing ritual of the hexagram. Also, before you begin, there are some sets of symbols that I must explain. The first of these are the letters I and R, which the ritual transliterates into their Hebrew equivalents Yod, Nun, Resh, and Yod. The Latin letters, of course, represent the distinctiveness from the page 96 of 372, sign that was placed on the cross of suffering in the myth of the crucifixion. The Hebrew letters, in the magic of Renaissance Kabbalah, are linked to the astrological forces of Virgo Yod, Scorpio Nun, and the Sun Resh. These in turn are represented by the Egyptian gods Isis Virgo Set, also known as Apophis or Typhon, Scorpio, and Osiris the Sun. All these symbols and characters linked together in this dizzying fashion compose a magical formula capable of awakening the power of illumination. It is called the formula of the divine white brilliance. Practiced over time, it becomes a powerful weapon in your mastery over lower forces. The magical name Lao is an acronym created from three of the gods above: Isis, Apophis, and Osiris. This name is therefore three different powers condensed down and expressed as one great entity. Io is an ancient Gnostic name of God. The word LVX is Latin lux for light. In ancient Latin inscriptions, the U appeared as a V. The letters LVX are linked to the gods Ophia, Ovia 3 different dramatizing postures that you adopt during the ritual. LVX then affirms that the activities of life, represented by the myth, are actually broken pieces of the light, or the original, ineffable glory of the All-Mind. Uniting them calls forth that original brilliance. Next, we come to the god name Ararada. This word is a Hebrew acronym for Akad Reshachuda, Areshachidada Timurada Resh, or in English, one is his beginning, one principle is his individuality, his permutation is one. This is a reminder that the power of each planet derives from the unlimited whole. The singular activity of the All-Mind, this unlimited whole, is expressed by the symbol of the hexagram itself. The hexagram represents the pressure that the All-Mind exerts on its creation, a sort of impact signature of divine power as it presses the universe to evolve and produce conscious life. I suggest you look at all magical symbols in this light. The ancient Kabbalists analyzed that power by attributing 6 planets to the points of the hexagram, with the sun at the center. Drawing the hexagram in different ways during ritual, you can supposedly manipulate different planetary energies by affirming their greater whole of the divine. The pentagram works by the same principle to manipulate elemental forces. That darkly splendid world 95D4, distinctiveness from the page 97 of 372, 96 chapter 5, drawing the hexagram that is composed of 2 interlocking triangles, can be a bit of a problem in ritual, because the whole figure is not composed off one continuous line. The famous Renaissance magician fixed that by tracing a unicursal form of the hexagram in his ceremonies, to the more experimental including Mathers himself.
Alright, so before I get into what you just heard, this is, like I said, it's nothing against Ralph at all. Maybe, it's best if people who are out there blaming, evil cabals and shit like that, to, instead of focusing on the evil cabals taking what he says and using it in a way of, choosing Jupiterian energy and focusing on that. I don't know. I think you truly do have to go through your dark side and realize what Saturn is trying to teach you before you can get more evolved. And, that's kind of the point when we start all this and the neophyte and all that. But as you just heard, with the greater ritual of the hexagram, another way they call it is the daily banishment of Saturn. So you're reducing Saturn's energy on you. You get a ton of benefits from that as well. And they say in this that the planet Saturn isn't exactly what they're referring to, even though they have correlations. I got something in my eye today, if you're wondering why it's a little darker. Piece of something there, so it's really irritating me. Pretty sure I got that piece of metal out, but I got a scratch, which really sucks. But anyways, so yeah, they're not necessarily talking about the planet, even though the planet does correspond to that, and as above, so below. So Ralph refers to as above, so below in his video, meaning what's above us is below us. It's also outside of us and within us, as the universe, so the soul, meaning, instead of picking Saturn or picking Jupiter, you're better off to embrace both of them. Understand they're both within you. So if you are of the belief that there is an evil group out there doing evil things and you think that's bad, well, understanding that if you were in their position with the same circumstances, since you have that same power within you, you would probably maybe even do the same thing as them. To judge them because you think they're doing something evil just to be doing it evil without knowing anything about them is very unbalanced and not very smart, or you didn't put much thought into that, just blaming them. It's like, I'm poor, I don't have any money, and so but even if I had money, I wouldn't do evil things. It's like, well, you don't have money, so you don't have that option. That's not the same as having money and deciding not to do evil things, or having power and knowledge and deciding not to do evil things. Those are different things. I was faced with circumstances this July and August, whether to curse or hex somebody or not. And, I did divination, I did a bunch of things, and it was probably tainted by my own views. And, I failed that test. I ended up doing that kind of stuff. And was it good? Was it bad? It doesn't matter. It taught me a lesson. Those lessons are very important, and to just avoid those lessons, or when those lessons come at you, and instead of embracing them and figuring out the lesson, you just blame it on evil groups or evil people or Saturn. It's like, no. Saturn's going to keep showing you those lessons if that's what you do. But if you decide to try to break it down and figure out what the fuck he's trying to teach you, then you're going to be way better off, because that's the point. And once you embrace Saturn and you figure out what the limitations specifically, that's where your chart comes in handy, but specifically what might be where your limitations are. Well, once you can embrace that and figure it out, you're going to really, I've heard this from multiple people, that once you figure out your limitation, instead of fighting against your limitation from Saturn, you embrace it and you learn the lesson, you most of the time become a teacher, a boss, someone who excels in that area of your life. So where Saturn is, they say it's karma. It's where your lessons are, your more profound lessons, I guess. But once you get through that, your life gets better. But if you're struggling against that the whole time and you just keep blaming other people instead of realizing it's within you to change it, it's within you to embrace it and figure it out, then you're never going to get any fucking further. You're going to keep falling behind and always having to blame somebody for your problems, when the only person to blame is, go look in the mirror. That's who you got to blame. But which is good news, because that means you can fucking fix it too. So, but on that same idea as above, so below, when there is cosmic activity above us, this has been proven. I played a podcast pretty long ago, I'd say. I don't know if it was last summer or early May this year. I have no idea when. But it was about cosmic activity rather, things happening in space, from asteroids, comets being seen, different things happening above us. And when they recorded what happened. There was plagues, there was hysteria, there was all these different things happening to the people below when things were happening above us. So there is a certain amount, and this is just more documentation and proof that when things happen up there, it affects us down here. But what I'm trying to do with this video is show you a way that you can beat this. This has been in the Golden Dawn for years. It's been before that was created. This is actually something that was later taught normally later than the first elemental grade in the Golden Dawn, but it was changed now. So you might not completely understand some of the things you're doing in here because you're just getting into it. But I don't know if it was Liam Thomas Christopher or someone else, or maybe it was Golden Dawn themselves, but whoever decided to change the order instead of having it later on in the curriculum and putting it here, decided, because it, you know, after your neophyte, this reduces all these forces against you. Do the lesser banishing for 6 months to a year, and that helps you with the things within this physical realm and get rid of banishing like your own bad shit and bad shit people are sending at you. But then once you get that under control, you're still going to have the energies above you, or these planetary energies, whether you think it's the planets or something like the planets or archetypes or whatever that's within you. This helps you reduce those things while you're learning, you're teaching, you're doing magic. And that's why in this earth elemental grade, the same grade where you do the greater ritual of the hexagram, you take care of your health and your finances. So by reducing those planets, it's easier to get rid of some of your addictions. It's easier to be able to bring money to you and banish your poverty, you know, because you're reducing that karma, those things above you, if you practice this. And that's what I'm trying to show you. I'm trying to tell you that. So you have people out there like Ralph Smart. Once again, I'm not knocking him, I'm not dissing him. I just think, you know, what he's saying, if he was to do something like this or know about something like this, he might have a different outlook on it, and maybe he's got a different game or aim or whatever the case is, and I have no reason to judge him or tell anybody that he's wrong. And you know, it's kind of the approach I'm going to try to take going forward instead of trying to correct people like the Thunder Wizard or Ralph and different things like that. Just simply give my perspective of why I disagree instead of straight out, you know, proving them wrong and being righteous, because, you know, who the fuck am I to do that to people? You know, I'm just somebody trying to understand this shit just like them. They're just trying to understand this shit. But at the same sense, there are ways to reduce these energies, and it's within this curriculum that I promote. You can do it. Everybody can do it. You know, it's so if you're worried about something like this, well, get going, get practicing, learn this shit, figure out what this is all about, figure out where your limitation is. If you want to do it by the book and you're starting your neophyte, well, that's fine. Figure out what your limitation is and figure out, you know, how things that happen to you aren't other people's faults. They're actually your fault, and see how you can fix that shit and, you know, straighten it out. But, you know, I got a whole lot more to say about this topic, but I'm probably not going to keep going. I'm probably just going to end it there. And I think that was enough for today, but I wouldn't fear this thing from happening. You know, other people are going to be controlled and ruled by these forces, or use it as an excuse to do crazy things, or whatever the case is. If there is the media or a cabal that likes to use these planetary conjunctions of opposing forces, extreme positive to extreme negative, to do bad things, well, you don't have to be ruled by that. If you do this, it will help you in every way, shape, and form. And I seriously mean that. So like the world's going to hell, they're forcing people to do vaccines. If you're reducing Jupiter's effect on you, and for some reason you got to go to court, reducing Saturn's effect on you, and they say you got to go to court because you're refusing to take the vaccine. I'm telling you, by doing something like this, you won't even have to show up. Your case will get thrown out. You'll be an exception. Whatever the case is, something will work in your favor. You know, I swear to God, I truly believe that. And I'm not saying to not take a vaccine or anything like that. Maybe you want to take the vaccine and they're not letting you. Well, things will work out in your favor. You'll be easier for you to not be manipulated and not be part of everybody in the crowd just for or against, or scared or angry, or whatever the case is, ruled by these forces, these emotions, these archetypes, these planets. That won't be you if you do shit like this. You know, you need to use Saturn to your benefit. There's different sayings, but, you know, knowing your enemy. If Saturn is the enemy, well, what would be the best thing to do? Get him to be your friend. Don't let him be your enemy. You know, because you can use Jupiter all you want. He's not going to be able to overthrow Saturn. There's no fucking way. It's air and water. They're opposites. Saturn's an air. It's related to the element of air, and Jupiter is related to the element of water. They're opposing forces. So when they meet up, they're gonna do their thing. You can get caught between that and pick sides. And yeah, okay, if you pick Jupiter, then Jupiter will be on your side. You pick Saturn, Saturn will be on your side. But then you're still unbalanced because one of those things you're choosing against. You're denying a part of yourself. you're removing your own energy. You're saying there's part of you, an energetic part of you, that is not in balance. So you go only Saturn, then you're going to be in your lower energies and whatever else. And if you go with Jupiter, well, without opening Saturn, you won't get there in the first place. So you'll be this holier than thou broke person who doesn't understand what he did wrong. And it's like, well, you decided to judge these forces instead of just understanding them and trying to learn about them and realize they're within you. And they're not good or bad. That's within you, what's good or bad. You know, what someone does with Jupiter might be bad, you know, and what someone does with Saturn might be good. If I was to use Saturn to try to banish everybody in my town's addictions or their poverty or their debt or, you know, whatever the case is that bad? No. If I was to use Jupiter, it would expand everybody's disease and expand coronavirus, for example. Well, that wouldn't be very fucking good. You know what I mean? So either one of these taken to either extreme is unbalanced. We have this opportunity where these two opposing forces are going to be within Aquarius, you know, age of Aquarius, blah, blah, blah. We have air and emotion. We have thoughts and emotion right there. Okay? All you need to do now is take the action and do this thing, reduce those effects, and those planets are going to be on your side. You'll be able to use them. It's, you know, it's a matter of going with the flow rather than against the flow, you know. So, I don't know, do your research, look shit up, maybe pick up this curriculum. I mean, you know, it's a process, but you're better off to start it, because unless you know another way around this, I don't know. But when I watch a video like that, worrying about these opposing forces above me, what's going to happen? It's like, I'm not in the least bit worried. I talk to Saturn and Jupiter all the time. I offer them shit all the time. I'm working with them. I got this whole system where I have archangels and the greater ritual of the hexagram that reduces them and protections, and, you know, none of that shit bothers me. I ain't worried about a damn thing. It's not going to affect me. It's not even going to affect my family who doesn't practice, because I understand and know what's going on. You know what I mean? Like, it's nothing to worry about. However, if you're not in balance and you think one of these is good and one of these is bad, well, then you might have some issues. So that would be your job, to become depolarized and realize what the hell's really going on. Is there something to this? Could this be dangerous? What is the good and bad things? Like I said before, there was they used to build temples and altars to the bad deities just like the good deities. The reason is, you know, if you don't want Satan or Saturn or Set or Kronos to do something to you or your family, well, you offer something to them. It's a symbolic gesture. And whether there's actually a being out there like Saturn that will do something to you unless you give them an offering, or it's just a symbolic gesture that gets into your subconscious mind that says, okay, well, if everybody thinks something bad's going to happen right now because of this, well, then Corey here already did something that he believes 100% is going to make him safe from any of this crap, so he doesn't get touched by this, you know. It's like that placebo effect. You give somebody a pill, they think it's going to heal their headache, the headache's gone. Well, you think Saturn's going to come through, and when it meets up with Jupiter and they're that close, there's a bunch of hell going to be broken loose. Well, you did something to remedy that, you know what I mean? So it doesn't matter what your belief is on it, as long as you do something and you believe what you did works, well, then it's going to work. And that's what we do here. And I mean, there's so many proof I could bring up in everyday life to prove this point that I'm not even going to bother. But anyway, so I'm going to leave you with the beginning of the chapter and well, what I already played about this part here, about the greater rituals of hexagram. I'm going to play that over again. I'm going to play it from the beginning. It explains a bit about the watchers and matter and all this other stuff. And it might be a little dark, but there's a point to it all. And once again, the point for you is to understand that there is a way for you to be able to be in control of these energies and not the other way around. But the first step is to realize that you're not a victim and people can't harm you unless you give your consent. And if you're wondering how you gave your consent, it's about going out there and saying, I'm a victim of all these people. I'm poor because of such and such. I am overweight because of such and such. I don't have love because of such and such. I can't get a good job because of such and such. That's your consent right there. So as soon as you get rid of that and you consent to yourself having power and being able to do these things and be in control of these things rather than them being in control of you, Well, now you're just taking back your consent. And you start something here to get something symbolically into your mind that reinforces that thought that you're saying, no, I'm taking my power back. And you put the emotion into taking your power back and saying, no, I'm no longer a victim. I'm grateful that I can control my life. And then you put the action towards it, which is the ritual magic, which is the shortcut. And then boom, you got a system that works, and you are part of the club that doesn't have to worry about this shit. Part of why Birch says it, he says, the witch's job is to learn to take the reins and not the ride, so we become in sync with nature. But once you become in sync with nature, you can affect nature, so you can start calling things to you, making things happen, banishing things out of your life. But what happens is when the energies above us, the moon, the other planets, when they start doing things, well, when we're in sync with nature and they start doing things, it controls us because we're part of nature now. We separated from the artificial intelligence or becoming cyborgs, whatever you want to call it, not knowing that you create your reality, okay? That kind of separates you from nature, yet you're still creating your reality. It's just through programming, all the programming you received over and over and over up until this point. Well, now you stop that, you become back in sync with nature, and you realize that you can control this, and you find the symbolic ways to be able to start steering where you want to go. But at a certain point, you've got to break from being completely in sync with nature. So you still have this knowledge, you're still able to steer. But the same sense, when Jupiter and Saturn meet up, it doesn't affect you unless you want it to. Or you keep it at bay, and then when you want to use those powers, when they sync up, then you can use those powers to your benefit. That's the point. That's taking the reins, not the ride. That's, when the moon waxes, you're all happy. When it wanes, you're not so happy, or you have less energy, or, whenever it's winter time, you want to hibernate. When it's springtime, you're all horny. In the summertime, you want to party. And in the fall, you're preparing, whatever. You get what I'm saying. So anyways, I think that's enough for today. I hope you enjoyed. Have a great fucking day.
5. That darkly splendid world, explosion. The darkness shattered. Unable to contain the light, broken shadows fell into the primordial chasm. Sparks of light fell among them, their reflections scintillating on the tumbling debris. In the nethermost parts of the chasm, the dark shards clutched at one another as they fell. Separated by the explosion, they longed to be whole, so between them, they spun a web of darkness, and space, and time congealed like a sticky net strung across the void. The net became a home away from home there in the deep, and the fallen ones skittered across their web like spiders in the dark. There they became the watchers as the boundaries of the universe took shape in the depths of emptiness. Their tapestry of gloom concealed the limitlessness of the divine. The unmanifest became substance, and the plan of the All-Mind, seemingly thwarted by the cataclysm, continued its inevitable course toward completion, even as it used these fallen angels, who were now cast in the role of the enemy. Into the web fell the sparks of light, like stunned fireflies. But of course they were immortal, and could not be harmed in their captivity. They existed in a higher dimension, appearing in this world only as brilliant pinholes in the shroud of time. They cast beautiful reflections of the divine in matter, each image conveying a unique aspect, and for a brief time, it seemed that a complete vision of the Creator would form. Reflected in the darkness, the All-Mind seemed once again near to reaching its goal, but the jealous fallen ones pounced on the sparks of light, and spun them into cocoons of matter. The Kabbalistic tradition refers to these cocoons as Kjipith, or shells, and they are maintained by all manner of crude and hurtful spirits that 89-90 Chapter 5 go by the same name. The dark angels spirited their captives away, hiding them in the depths of their kingdom of shells, until not a trace of radiance remained. The divine image clouded over as the Qliphoth deprived the angels of light of visible expression. Having no visible presence and existing in another level of reality, the divine sparks remained complacent, as though slumbering, and had no impact on the reign of darkness and fire. And the life that would eventually arise in the universe would have no knowledge of them. The stifling off light created a terrible heat, which smoldered forth from within the depths. The universe was a seething waste of refuse from the cataclysm. Nothing remained of the original, ineffable glory. All was in a state of deprivation, seemingly cut off from the perfect peace and profusion of the All-Mind. But it was a deception, after all, a fiction, a drama on the stage of which a plan was unfolding. From behind the scenes unceasing, the All-Mind exerted pressure to breathe life into its creation. Space cleared and expanded. The heat of the primordial universe was permitted to cool. Matter hardened out of energy, and the universe as we know it today came about. The divine dared not show itself directly in this realm, lest it destroy the web of space and time by making everything happen at once. If it did so, who would bear witness to the image that was yet to form within creation? Instead, it expressed itself indirectly, by signs and symbols, and by cycles it showed evidence, by the interplay of the three alchemical principles, by the mingling of the four elements, by the phenomena of electricity and the formation of life, and by the radiance of physical light, shining in the blackness of space. Physical light is as nothing compared to the true radiance of the All-Mind, which is light beyond anything conceivable to the mind of a material being. In the larger scheme, physical light is but a specialized kind of darkness that conveys merely the impression of divinity. But as yet, there were no creatures clever enough to recognize that impression. Signs and portents paraded before their seeking eyes, but those eyes were seeking other things: food, sex, and shelter. It seemed that the fallen angels had won, despite the order that showed itself forth in the sluggish medium of matter, despite the beauty of the galaxies, stars, and planets, and the blossoming of all kinds of life. There were no creatures that could experience that order, and bear witness to an image within it. If God stands before a mirror and no one sees his reflection, does he exist? The All-Mind was blind behind the veil of the chasm, not yet having sprouted eyes and ears within its creation that could relay back to the infinite any impression of its own mystery. The All-Mind quite simply did not exist. The universe was now like a vast shroud that gave shape to an invisible presence. To be inside of the chasm was to be outside of the All-Mind, incapable of experiencing directly the limitless ocean of light behind every facade. There was life roaming about within the universe, of course, on the surfaces of that obscuring skin, on dim little planets, creatures created in the physical universe by physical laws. Blinded by what they could see, their sense organs could only take part in the world from which they were made. The creatures within the universe seemed utterly untouched by the peace and unity that the web of the fallen angels withheld from them. But the All-Mind dared not intervene directly on the behalf of these material beings, trusting instead to the unfolding of its cosmic plan. Only in the fullness of time was everything to be perfect, and at this point in the drama, it remained a mystery as to how the divine sparks would mobilize themselves as souls within these oblivious creatures, rousing them from the fatalistic, automated laws of matter. The All-Mind's steady pressure, through successive eons, had caused the processes of life and evolution. The fallen angels resisted that evolution. They couldn't help it. It was the purpose of the Watchers to bring setbacks to the plan. Entire species were lost due to the harsh limitations imposed by their physical laws. But still, ever more complex organisms appeared. The harder the Watchers resisted the plan, the further life evolved to overcome that resistance. Just as divine light can express itself indirectly in the radiance of the stars, so can its consciousness worm its way through the fiery genesis of worlds, through the interplay of the forces of nature, and through the chemical processes of the most minute particles in the dark pit. Something was developing from myth to science here. As I speak of biology and evolution, we enter a more familiar realm, in which symbolism is less necessary. It becomes possible to speak in terms of science. I will periodically alternate in my narrative from myth to science and back to myth again. In regard to myth, there are many truths that we as humans cannot apprehend directly, but this should never stop us from attempting to deduce them through symbol and parable. Concepts like All-Mind, divine sparks, and fallen angels, that darkly splendid world 92 Chapter 5, represent forces that we cannot put a finger on but that we nonetheless can grasp intuitively. Perhaps other labels would do better. Substitute ones that work well for you, and see if the legend of the fall into matter can shed any light on the human condition. I am not saying to you now that there really are fallen angels crouching within the physical laws of the universe, and waiting to pounce on any magician foolish enough to call on their power. If I were to take me literally, you might fall into the trap of the religious zealot, who clings to facts instead of exploring his world. We should never regard mythical references as historical fact, just as we should never regard the latest theories of physics as the last word. We can, however, employ ideas from both myth and science to gain new perspectives, possibly even perspectives that transcend the limitations of our ape-like brains. It is important for you to start developing your ability to work with the deep concepts embodied in the characters of mythology. Doing so will enable you eventually to triangulate in on forces deep within yourself to create change from the inside out. From the mythological depths of your own divine spark to the scientifically measurable world of your physical senses, I now resume the narrative in a more conventional scientific vein. Life has formed as a resistance to the disintegration of the universe. Why this has happened is perhaps the mystery that is the mother of all mysteries, The second law of thermodynamics rules everything. It states that order unstoppably disintegrates into disorder. Never mind that the process by which this happens has a definite order to it. That process is called entropy, and entropy is the tendency of all things to decay and disintegrate. Nothing lasts. A box filled with chemicals may serve as a good example of this. The chemicals, orderly and distinct from one another, begin to react, producing heat. Their molecular structures change, and the box gradually settles down into a chaotic, inert soup in which nothing further happens. Order has dissipated. It is possible to reverse this change by opening the box and manipulating the mixture. But yet more energy and materials must be expended, thereby producing even more disorder on the outside of box 1. According to the second law of thermodynamics, there is nothing in the universe that can win against entropy. There are pockets of resistance, of course. A newborn kitten is a good example of matter organizing itself in spite of chaos. But, as we all know, cats eventually die, and even as they maintain their biological orderliness for their short allotted time, they do so at great cost, extracting a huge amount of materials from the environment, breaking them down, assimilating them, excreting the waste, and expending a likewise huge amount of energy to do so. The disorder that exists in the wake of an animal's path through life way more than makes up for the order that manifests in the creature itself. Earth's biosphere itself is a rich pocket of resistance. It maintains itself as an orderly place in which the chemical reactions of life can occur. But to do so, it also requires an enormous amount of energy, which it gets from the sun. The sun, in turn, radiates heat because it is undergoing its own process of entropy, the fusion reaction that generates its heat, and light will eventually exhaust the hydrogen and helium that fuel it. Like the box of chemicals in the example above, our sun will eventually cool, settle down, and collapse, and the orderly paradise that is Earth will vanish within hours. The chemistry of life is the best example we have of resistance to entropy. Even though nothing within the material world can triumph over decay and death, life provides a temporary oasis of relief in a desert of disintegration, and as we humans are the witnesses, a remarkable spectacle is possible within that temporary refuge. The grade of Zelator, this somewhat bleak picture of the material world, is the territory that the student traverses in the Zelator grade. The word Zelator, pronounced Zelator, is a corruption of the Latin word zelotes, meaning zealous person or zealot. The realm of material life is the official laboratory of this grade, and the student is expected to work up enough zeal to live effectively within it as the grades pass by. Material existence is entirely bounded and ruled by the planet Saturn. As you may have guessed from the assigned reading so far, when I refer to Saturn, I don't necessarily mean the planet in an astronomical sense, but rather the planet in the astrological sense. This means I am talking about a particular kind of energy that happens to correspond to the movements of the physical planet Saturn. I am not saying that the physical planet in the sky is the source of that energy. Whether or not Saturnian emanations come from the physical planet is a matter of debate among astrologers. In any event, the forces to which Saturn corresponds are much larger. That darkly splendid world 94 Chapter 5, than our little solar system. The first grade of Adeptship, and the first grade of the Inner Order. In the grades of the original Golden Dawn, the student demonstrated grade signs to show that he was ready to receive initiation to the next level. Also in the original Golden Dawn, this hexagram ritual was not given to the student until he was ready for advancement to the Inner Order, perhaps because of the secrecy of the LVX signs. In this modernized curriculum, that has changed. It turns out that the 5=6 signs and the hexagram formulations are good assistants to the student's evolution in the earlier stages too. He may not be able to employ the grade signs as an adept does, but that doesn't mean he won't benefit from doing them also. Regular performance of the banishing ritual of the hexagram retards the aging process. It is a good idea then to bring it into play as early in your work as possible. Earth. Having completed your probationary period in the neophyte grade, you are now ready to proceed to the alchemical rituals of the elemental grades. Deep within the recesses of the material husk in which you live, deeper than the chemistry of your cells, the hidden light of higher worlds lies in wait. If you persevere in the Zelator curriculum, you may succeed in jump-starting the process that slowly unravels that husk, liberating your divine spark. From one perspective, Zelator is the only grade of initiation. All other grades are simply stages of advancement, for it is in the Earth grade that your feet are placed firmly at the beginning of the path of transformation. You are confronted with the physical world, which you apprehend through the physical senses. The signs and portents of the divine are waiting for you to notice them, and the exercises of this grade prod your mind to awaken from the fatalistic automated laws of matter, as mentioned. This grade corresponds to the element of earth, represented by the bottom sefer of the Tree of Life Malkuth. Malkuth means kingdom, and in the Zelator grade you will contact, purify, and consolidate the forces of the kingdom of the physical world in your aura. The purpose of the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram was to remove you from the influence of elements entirely. It has supposedly at this point established that darkly splendid world 99. Page 101 of 372, 100 Chapter 5, a level playing field for you to begin experiencing the elements, a fire being one at a time, each in controlled isolation. In Zelator, the earth aspect of your existence is sifted out from its entanglement with the other elements. The observer, the exercises of this grade draw your attention to matters of physical existence. They may also cause havoc with your personal life, liberating personal energy or depleting it. They may cut you off from the tribal mentality of your family and peers. They may cause changes in diet, health, and career. You would do very well to begin cultivating your inner observer, in other words, paying attention to your physical body at all times and carefully noting what is happening in regard to your sensations, mannerisms, breathing, emotions, and thoughts. Whatever difficulties arise, the student who takes refuge in the spirit of dispassionate observation will find comfort in seeing these changes as necessary and as signs that the rituals are working. The disturbing effects of the elemental grades. If I begin the elemental grades, make sure you resolve to finish them. Each grade will exaggerate aspects of your lower nature that correspond to one element. In Zelator, your earthly circumstances, wealth, home, body, and physical senses will be subject to fluctuations. In Theoricus, your air-like qualities, thoughts, beliefs, fears, and habits will become stirred up. Practicus plays heavily upon the emotions and creative abilities faculties associated with water. Stopping your occult practice in the middle of this climb through the elements may result in a feeling of being stuck between worlds, half asleep and half awake. The elemental grades throw you off balance until you can complete them, and then put in order what you have acquired in each. It is not desirable to remain in an unbalanced state. The symbolism of your ritual space. This book requires only a simple temple space, a patch of bare flora at least 8 feet across. The basic symbolism of compass points, the cross, the circle, and the floor on which you stand are powerful enough symbols, and these symbols are to form the base of the magical system you are learning. Page 102 of 372. To illustrate the important symbolism of fire ritual space, I would like to refer to an old Victorian novel called Flatland, a romance of multiple dimensions, by Renee Abbott. It tells a story set in an imaginary flat world of two-dimensional beings. These beings don't know what three-dimensional space is like, because they live on a plane that has no upward and downward directions. They know only north, south, east, and west. All they can see are the edges of other two-dimensional objects that exist on the same flat plane that they live on. These beings cannot look up or down out of their plane, because up and down in Flatland do not even exist. One day, one of our Flatland characters, a square, has an encounter with a three-dimensional being, a sphere. The sphere, who cannot squeeze itself into the two-dimensional plane, cannot reveal itself all at once. It must simply pass through Flatland. To a flat two-dimensional being, this is a frightening event, because the sphere appears in Flatland out of nowhere, and it appears as a circle that mysteriously expands and contracts from a geometric point. The novel Flatland is a parable, and the reader is expected to identify with the two-dimensional beings. Just as Flatlanders are blind to the third dimension, we as three-dimensional beings blind ourselves to the fourth. We get so caught up with objects that we can see that we forget to recognize those that we cannot. There are four-dimensional objects around us that are passing through this world, but we usually fail to recognize them as such. And this is happening all the time. Every time you witness the process of change, it is an example of a higher dimensional phenomenon passing through our plane. You yourself are such a phenomenon. As you move and change shape throughout your life, you are passing through this world, much as a sphere passes through Flatland. Have you ever done the experiment in science class, in which you place iron filings on a flat sheet of cardboard and hold a magnet to them from beneath the cardboard? The iron filings align themselves in a pattern, revealing hidden lines of force that are acting from a higher dimension. Spiritual powers like this magnet. As it draws close to the flatland of the material world, material circumstances orchestrate themselves as though moved by some invisible purpose. The story in Flatland is a terribly simple analogy with many unaddressed contradictions. But looking at your ritual space in these terms, you can automatically see that it is designed as a sort of flatland. It has 4 compass points. Attributed to these points are the 4 aspects of three-dimensional experience, the 4 states of that darkly splendid world 101. Page 103 of 372. 102 Chapter 5. Matter, solid, gas, liquid, and plasma, earth, air, water, and fire. These categorize for us all of the things that we acknowledge to be real within our limited three-dimensional bias. They characterize our familiar world of limited dimensions. Upward and downward, in the flatland symbolism of a temple, refer analogously to the hidden directions that we cannot see,